we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah. You want to introduce yourself?
Okay. My name's Allie Dashow. I am 27 years old, and I was diagnosed with choroidal melanoma, a type of ocular melanoma, on June 1st of 2022.
You want to talk?
Sorry, should I go into like my story? How?
Yep.
Okay, I'll just go into it all. So, growing up, probably for like the past decade, I've always had a lot of like medical issues coming up, and I've always been really on top of advocating for myself, going to the doctor, making sure that I needed to do what I needed to do for my health. And so, in about March of 2022, I started getting intermittent shooting pain through my left eye. And it was really intermittent, so much so that I really didn't give it much thought. I thought, oh, maybe this is just like my dry eye acting up. And it was really unlike me, though, to not go to the doctor and seek medical attention or medical opinion. So I mentioned it in passing to my therapist one day. So now we're fast forwarding to May of 2022. And my therapist said to me, Allie, like, that's your vision, that's your eye, like, that's not something you want to mess around with. You should definitely go get it checked out. And I still tell my therapist to this day, she is the person who saved my life. Because if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have gone to the doctor. So the next day I went to my local optometrist, and they told me that I had a nevus in my eye, also known as a freckle. But she said not to worry about it, but she told me that there was fluid buildup behind my retina and that maybe that was causing the pain. So she sent me to a retina specialist who I saw the following week, probably I think the following Monday, and did a bunch of scans. And the doctor came in and he was looking at my scans, saying how, the scans looked interesting to him. And then he was like, I'll be right back. I'm going to grab my colleague. So the colleague came in. They were asking me questions, looking at the scans, and they said, the good news is you have this freckle in your eye and it doesn't seem like it's cancer, but you have something called choroidal neovascularization, and we can start you on eye injections today. And so the colleague said this, and then my retina specialist said, you know what, why don't we get a second opinion? So I was like, okay, that sounds good. And so at the time, I was under the impression we were getting a second opinion on whether it was choroidal neovascularization. But a few days later, I called up the office and just wanted to know what exactly I should tell this specialist that they were referring me to. So I asked the nurse on the phone, like, hey, like, I just want to double check. I'm trying to find out if this is, in fact, choroidal neovascularization, right? She was like, let me pull up your chart. And she said, no, actually, they want to get a second opinion to make sure it's not cancer. So that was kind of surprising to me, but at the time, I really wasn't anxious. It didn't occur to me that it could actually be cancer. So they sent me to a top specialist in New York City, Dr. Marr, and my parents came with me to the appointment, and I'm glad that they were there so I didn't have to break this news to them, but I went in, he did his own scans, he looked me in the eyes and told me that I had choroidal melanoma. It's a huge shock. Definitely took a while to process it. And that first day, my parents and I weren't that concerned. It seemed like, I'd get the treatment and everything would be fine. But long story short, I started to find out more information about this cancer. And on average, 50% of people with ocular melanoma end up metastasizing to oftentimes lungs, liver, and the prognosis is usually less than 10 years if it does spread. So right now there really aren't any good treatments. So once I started to really understand the ins and outs of this, I was like, okay, I need to really take my healthcare into my own hands and figure out like what treatment am I going to do. So I ended up seeing another doctor, top doctor in New York City, who's an ocular oncologist, Dr. Paul Finger. And through my discussions with him and reading research articles, I decided to get plaque brachytherapy, which is when they insert a radioactive plaque into your eye. And you usually have it there for about 5 to 7 days. When it's in, people can't come within 6 feet of you because you are radioactive. So I think it was June 29th of 2022. So just a few weeks later, I had my plaque brachytherapy surgery. The plaque was in for a week. They then removed it. And long term, I was told that I could develop radiation retinopathy, which is basically side effects that develop due to the radiation. Dr. Finger told me he didn't seem to think I was definitely going to develop it because I had like a lower dose of radiation. And he said on average people develop it after 2 years and 3 months after their radiation. But this past July, so a little over a year after my surgery, I ended up developing radiation retinopathy. So that can cause hemorrhaging, glaucoma, blindness in that same eye. And so I'm now getting injections every 6 weeks. They're called anti-VEGF injections, and it helps slow down the progression of the radiation retinopathy and those symptoms. And so after I was diagnosed, I came to find out the only way to know if you have ocular melanoma is by a dilated eye exam. And it's pretty rare. It's, I think, 6 in every million people are diagnosed with ocular melanoma. Typically age 60 or 70 or above, typically in light blue eyes, light green eyes, so I really don't fit the profile. But I've really immersed myself in the research and joining support groups online to really get a better understanding of what this cancer is, what the implications are. And so it's definitely been tough. I think I go through periods where it's less on my mind and then periods where it's more so on the forefront of my mind. And it's tough because it's such a rare cancer, so there isn't that much funding going into the research. There aren't that many people with it, especially as a young adult having this. I haven't really met that many people, or I haven't met anyone face to face in real life with this cancer, especially anyone who's my age. So I definitely tell everybody now who goes that everybody needs to be getting their eyes examined, especially dilated, because I know even for myself, there were many years before I had glasses that I never went to the eye doctor. I didn't go to the optometrist. My eyes were never checked. And so, yeah, it's a really rare form of cancer, but I've definitely met a lot of amazing people throughout this process, and I think it's given me definitely a new perspective on life. I think I've always been someone who's very in the moment and present in my life and really appreciative of what I have. But I think one thing that I've realized is, right, like your future isn't promised, whether that be due to cancer, metastatic spread, or anything else. And so something I've really been trying to do is step outside of my comfort zone and do the things that I otherwise wouldn't have done. So right now I'm actually on a retreat through True North Trek that the Melanoma Research Foundation is sponsoring with young adult cancer survivors. And this is something I never would have done. And so I think having cancer, while it has been awful in so many ways, it's also helped me realize that, even if I do feel content with my life, there's still so much else out there, so many other people, places to see, things to do. And helping me realize like I can step outside of my comfort zone and challenge myself to do different things. So yeah.
Are you happy that you came on this trip?
I'm so happy I came on this trip. When I saw the post on Facebook, I said to myself, oh my God, this sounds so cool, like a retreat for young adult cancer survivors, and the whole thing's paid for. And of course with cancer, there's so many medical bills. So I was like, this is so cool, but I'm not gonna do it. Like why would I do it? And then I texted my friends about it, and they were like, oh my God, you should go. And I was like maybe you're right, like maybe I should. And I think within a few hours I decided like, no, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna apply for this. And it's been such an amazing weekend being with people who get it, being able to talk about it honestly in such a raw way. And there are other young adult cancer survivors here who, they don't necessarily have ocular melanoma, but other forms of melanoma. And even though our experiences are so different, there's so many ways in which the experiences are so similar, whether that's talking about like dating with cancer, right? And when do you tell someone that you have this diagnosis? Or talking about how it impacts our loved ones and the ones around us, talking about how it impacts our professional work, our relationships. There's, I think, so many conversations that I have had with, my peers here that have been so moving and so validating, because, other people can't relate, and I have so many supportive, amazing people in my life who I love and I have shared this stuff with. But to be with people who actually get it and have gone through it, It's so incredibly different. And I think being on this trip has also just helped me be more grounded in my life. And I think this trip has also made me realize how much I appreciate like nature. I'm not a nature gal. I don't really hike. I like to go to the beach, and that's about the extent of it, or I like to go for a quick walk around my neighborhood. But being in such a peaceful, calming, beautiful environment, I think has made me feel so much more in touch with myself and my story and the people around me. Like it's helped me just slow down, take a breath, and truly realize like nothing else matters in this moment. I don't need to think about anything else. I don't need to do anything else. I can just be and slow down. Um, and I think too, you know, when you're diagnosed with cancer and you're calling your insurance company, you're calling your doctor, you're trying to figure out a treatment plan, you go through the treatment plan. It's so hard to process all of it on like an emotional level because you're going through the motions because you have no other choice. And so I think being able to take a step back and spend a long weekend to talk about cancer with people who get it and talk about a million other things under the sun, it's allowed me, I think, to process my journey in a way in which I haven't been able to. Because day to day, you're going to work, you're, I don't know, doing the things that you do day to day, and you don't have the opportunity to just sit and think and talk and like allow yourself to emotionally go to, you know, a deeper, more upsetting like place. So I'm so thankful I went on this trip. I think it's possibly one of the most enjoyable, life-changing things I've like ever done for myself.